Fare evasion continues to be a big issue in New York City, and we have the perfect guest to speak about that today as we discuss possible solutions. This is Nuance. I'm Mike Scala, an attorney and an MC, joined as always by Jay Carter, also known as Timid, the hip hop artist in the chair of BLM Tokyo. Back for your second week stateside, right, Jay?
Yeah, second week stateside. Yeah, it's just been kind of chill this past week. So, um and talking about seconds, we have Chris Craven, second time around on the podcast as well.
That's
How
right. Chris Craven, for those local to the Howard Beach, Broad Channel, Rockaway area, you see the posters often for local charity wrestling events and different things like that. Chris Craven is often a part of these events, but people may not know he's also an MTA bus operator. So he wanted to come and talk about that side of things, right, Chris?
Yes, sir. Pleasure to be here. My name's Chris. My friends call me Craven, and I'm happy to be on the show. And as Mike said, I usually come around to plug wrestling shows, but today we're going to talk about a topic that's near and dear to me. I'm a New York City bus operator. I work overnights, and the fare evasion epidemic, as I like to call it, is out of control. And it seems like the system just keeps putting band-aids on it, and it's not getting fixed anytime soon.
let
Yeah.
me like real quick, you said you work overnight?
Yes, sir.
So you drive the night shift on the bus?
Yes, I do.
Oh, that's got to be rough. I've worked graveyard shift before, and it's not a pretty thing. And I've also worked as a driver before, and I couldn't imagine doing graveyard shift driving. I would be useless. That's rough.
You got to get used to it. And as a teenager, I was a night owl, and I spent a lot of time hanging out at night. So the night I always wanted, once I got the NCAA job, I always wanted to work nights. So
Okay.
working nights fits my lifestyle. I have a wife and kids. She works days, I work nights. We work opposite. And the MTA, I will say, which is a very good company as far as pay wise, benefit wise. They take care of their employees. They want to make sure that we're there, we're healthy, and we keep coming back. Um, so I'm very happy in that sense. And I love what I do. I mean, I love to drive when I'm not at home with my family. We're usually driving somewhere on a vacation or something. So I'm good at what I do. I got really good at it. I love it. And I found somebody dumb enough to pay me to do it. So I'm living the American dream.
Absolutely. But I'm glad you came on to talk about fare evasion because we've covered that topic on the show before, and we've seen stats like up to $1 billion a year is lost in revenue due to fare evasion. And apparently, a lot of it is happening on the buses, right? So we wanted to talk about that. What is your experience with that? First of all, why is it so difficult to stop people from getting on the bus without paying?
Well, it's basically, we're not cops, we're bus operators. Our major job and our major position is to drive from point A to point B as safely as possible. One of the big issues is when we went to MetroCard. I remember in the late 70s, early 80s, going to work with my father, and I am a real life living Bronx tale. I sat behind my father on the bus. I used to hit the fare change, and all the little old ladies used to pinch my cheek and give me quarters. So I never wanted to be a bus operator. It was the furthest thing from my mind. My first love and passion is professional wrestling. That's what I always wanted to do growing up. But it just happened that life went in that direction. And one day I was like, I got to pick something. I had to figure something out. And I started looking into driving. I drove school bus. I worked for Adirondack Trailways as a driver. And then I became a dispatcher for them for 10 years until MTA called me and I went to the MTA side of things, which is, a public worker instead of a private company. And with the public city job, they pay more, their benefits are much. I
Right.
can't talk about their benefits. Their benefits are
Sure.
wonderful.
Right.
So,
But I'm just interested to hear more about what happened. So if someone gets on the bus and just doesn't pay, I mean, would you try to stop them? Do you say anything? What do you do?
we are unofficially told not to say anything.
Not to say anything. Okay.
Unofficially, turn your head. There's a button that we press that supposedly records it, and if there's so many recorded, they're supposed to send undercovers on the bus. My my belief, and this is just my belief. Somebody can school me if I'm wrong, we press the button to show that they're in the red and that they need more government money. That's
Mm,
Right. And you know, listen, I think, you know, someone might hear that and think, oh, well, that sounds like you know, an inadequate response. But, you know, like you said, you guys aren't police officers. You're there to do a job. And if you it would be quite unsafe for the bus drivers to confront people coming on that are adamant about not paying. You know, that would be uh, so I can see from the MTA point of view to say, listen, don't, you know, don't get involved physically in that.
right.
Just do what you're supposed to be doing, and we'll take care of the rest on the back end.
But but here's the thing: is there no way to install some kind of mechanism, which might not be foolproof, but at least some kind of blockage? Like you have the turnstile, right, in the subway. Is there a way to just make it so that people, someone can't physically enter the bus until they've paid?
You could install a turnstile, but then you have to figure out a way to make sure that you're letting your ADA customers on, which they get a lot of funding for the ADA
Hmm.
customers. So
Okay,
you have to
right.
make it wheelchair accessible, and that the people with the scooters and the walkers and the canes, and they all have to be able to get onto it. Back when I was a kid, my father went to work with a billy club, and listen, my father was 5'2". He the uniform with pride, and when my father walked into a room at that size, you still knew he was there because he had that presence. Like he didn't have too many problems when he was operating the bus because bus operators were respected. But when we went to the Metro card, it became a free for all because they got the money even before you get on the bus. That you're paying at the machine and you're just dipping the card to show a tally of who pays what and where the government funded money is going to be allocated. So with the assaults going up in the late 80s and mid 90s, and a couple of drivers, I think one or two even died from assaults, they came to the conclusion that it's not worth it to fight with these people. We're getting government funding anyway, so just let them. That's my belief in the system.
Right. It makes sense. It just it's kind of crazy to hear that, right? That someone can just get on the bus and say, I'm not paying F you and sit down and you can't do anything about it. You know what I mean? Like in my mind, I'm thinking this is going to cause a whole scene. I'm not driving this bus until you pay. What do you mean? I'm calling the cops. You know what I mean? But then you're holding up the whole bus and you're affecting everyone else's commute. So, it's like you kind of tied there, but it just does seem wild to me that someone could
And it
do
puts you
that
in
so
the
freely.
danger.
Right.
It could also put you in the danger as
Sure.
well. Um,
My
now,
main objective is to get home every night to my family. So, and
Right.
in one
absolutely, absolutely.
safe,
Um,
one
now,
piece,
I'm sorry.
safe and in one piece.
Right, absolutely. Now, yeah, I remember the article that we had read before, we had talked about, and they said nearly half of all riders don't pay their fare. And my confusion was on a bus, there's only two ways in, right? There's the back door and then the front door. And generally, and I was thinking, are people just sneaking in through the back door, or are they being that blatantly bold that they just walk up through the front door and be like, yeah, whatever.
They walk up through the front door, and when you're in certain neighborhoods, they look at you with that hardcore look, like "Go ahead, challenge me." And
Mm.
Yeah,
I mean, I'm a pretty easygoing, happy-go-lucky guy, but when I'm at work, I have my Terminator face on, and I just do my robotic job. I just drive.
right,
So
right.
not looking to get messed with, but I'm not looking to mess with anybody either. So it's, you just sit there with that stern face and you do your job. And after a while, you just become numb to it. It's just, you're a
So
robot.
that's
Right.
a really good question, Jay. I want to kind of learn more about this aspect of it. So, Chris, in your experience, first of all, would you estimate that about 50% of your riders don't pay?
I would say 50% or more, depending upon what line it is.
Okay. And what most commonly happens? Is it mostly that someone looks at you with that stern face? Is it people pretending they forgot? Or what is like mostly what happens? Does anyone just walk by and then you say, hey, you forgot to pay or something? Or you just kind of let
Yeah,
everyone go and do what they do?
just walk by and do what they do. For the most
Okay.
part, I don't even look at them. I just hit the button. And after a while, you're gonna have a permanent tattoo with the number on your finger.
Right. Right.
you
Right.
know,
So would you say most of it is people like looking at you like what you can do about it kind of thing?
I would
Yeah.
say I would
Okay.
say close to 80% just look and
Mhm.
keep walking. You
Wow.
know, I
And
had
I
one
think,
I had one
Okay.
guy get on and he was covered, and all you could see was this, and he would give you
Mm,
that glaring stare and just walk.
yeah.
Right. I think it's the what they call it these days. It's I mean it's the balaclava, but I guess in New York they call it the shiesty these days.
Mm,
Yes.
It's very very common to wear.
right.
But what I say is they're the unwanted, needed redheaded stepchildren in New York. We don't get the respect that we deserve, but everybody needs us.
And I think, see, here's the thing, like um with the subway, if someone doesn't pay, they either hop the turnstile or whatever, there are police officers in the subway, and there's some potential either backup for the MTA workers or potential to catch the people doing a thing. But on the bus, you guys are on your own.
And plus, there was a law passed down that if you assault a bus operator, it's a felony, or an MTA worker, it's supposed to be a 7-year sentence. And now, since the recent regime that's been going on for the past 5 to 10 years, they get light sentences. They get slaps on the wrist.
Right.
People get assaulted, and the people doing the assault get to walk out, and they can assault somebody again the next day.
So they're not being held to account as per the law that was supposed to stop them from doing the assaults.
That's something that we've been fighting for, and that's something we've had rallies. We went up to Albany to, we want this enforced. Like, we're human beings too. We have families. We're providing a service. And we feel that this is what we were meant to do, and we love what we do. But we want the respect that we deserve. That you used
Have
to
you ever been assaulted as a bus driver?
know. I've been,
Thank God.
verbally confronted.
Right.
I do my best. They try to teach us in classes that they give us. They really put a lot of work into teaching us how to deal with the situation, like
Sure.
escalation classes. MTA does their due diligence to try to make us accountable, and like, don't get into a confrontation. Do your best to de-escalate it. I have to go once a year for training classes. I have to go once a year for a road test, but we sit in a classroom once a year and just watch videos on de-escalation and how to avoid accidents and dealing with customers and customer policies. So they're pretty diligent about making us accountable. My thing is, when does the people become accountable? Well, how come the civilian is no longer accountable? How come they're allowed to get away with this? And, I've come to the conclusion that there's two fixes for this. Either you start an MTA police force and you create more jobs and you put two cops on every bus that's married to the driver and they enforce the fare, or you get rid of the fare altogether, as I've spoken to Mike about, and every New Yorker pays a 2 to 3% tax on their paycheck weekly. And then you don't have to worry about the fare. It's hop on, hop off ride. And
Well,
some of the reasons why that doesn't happen is, you know, it's political.
sure. So something needs to be done, right? I mean, I think we can all agree that this system is broken as it is, right? This is not working. And now you're seeing things like congestion pricing. A lot of people are upset having to pay more tolls. But why? The MTA is saying there's a big shortfall of fares, and they'll cite that $1 billion worth of revenue loss per year in fare evasion, right? I mean, if you were to somehow address this, if you were to tackle fare evasion successfully, however you do it, that would seem to do a lot of good in terms of the shortcomings, right? In terms of the revenue shortfalls, if you can make that up some other way.
If
Right.
there's a way to force everybody to pay or to tackle the fare evasion, things would change. But they're not changing because, once again, it's more than likely political behind the scenes.
Well, yeah, it is. It's difficult, right? It's heavy lifting, I guess, regardless of which way you go. Either you try to make everyone pay to get the money back, or like you said, make the fares free, right? Get rid of the fares, but then you have to still make up that money somehow. So you're saying more taxes. Well, that's going to be difficult politically as well, right? Obviously, you find a
Sure.
lot of opposition to that. So whatever you do is going to be tough, but it seems like something needs to be done regardless, right? I mean, you can't keep going like this.
It's just getting worse. And
Yeah.
I used to drive lines where most of the people paid, but then they started to pick up that people weren't paying. And, like, they were like, why am I paying if this guy ain't paying? Oh, they
Right.
just know, and then you get questioned, and that creates another confrontation. How come you're not enforcing the fare? Oh, people just walk right past you. And listen, I don't have the training to fire a firearm. I don't have a
Sure.
firearm. I don't have a badge that states I'm a New York City deputy or police officer, and I'm not allowed to carry any type of defense weapon because if you get caught with it, they're going to fire you on the spot.
But you just raised a really good point. I can see how people who have paid the fare their whole lives will start to say, well, why should I keep paying this fare if everyone around me is not doing it and they're getting away with it? I'm the sucker here for paying every time, right? There are no consequences. So it kind of incentivizes more people not to pay the fares, right? And the problem builds on itself.
And then it becomes another government problem. They go, well, we're in the red. We need more government funding.
Right.
Right. Which in turn will raise taxes or cut services for the rest of the citizenry, and
Yeah.
you get the cycle continues.
Yeah.
And you mentioned about, you guys don't have the training, you're not allowed to carry firearms and that. Personally, I don't think that should be your responsibility.
Right.
I think that would put, even if you were allowed to carry them, I think that would put you guys in more danger than it would be worth because, yeah, I mean, ideally you can think, oh, well, if I've got protection or firearm and I confront this person, okay, that's that one person. But you're pulling up through different people's neighborhoods and they could pull up and have like 10 people waiting for you when the bus stop gets there. And now you're not John McClane in Die Hard having to, you know what I mean? So that to
Ducks
me
in a
is something that MTA needs to work out to get that instead of trying to put it off on the drivers to do.
I think some of the change that's coming is going to help with that, where they're going to put the bulletproof glass in, and they're supposed to be closing us in, from what I heard. And it'll be a closed-in cab, and the fare box won't be there, so the people's hands can't reach under. And I had a friend of mine. She went to pick somebody up, and for no apparent reason, didn't even say two words to her. The guy just threw coffee on her for no reason.
Wow.
You know,
Wow.
hot
I
coffee.
wish I wish there was some physical mechanism that could be employed, right? It just seems crazy to me that people can just get on the bus. I can just walk on the bus and that's it. They're on, nothing could be done. You know what I mean? I understand the turnstile, like the subway, could be difficult logistically, but it still seems to me that there should be some kind of physical mechanism that you could install, even if it's the door not opening. I don't know, something should be able to be done to physically stop people from fare evading.
In the last few years, they spent an endless amount of money on refurbishing and getting brand new buses.
Mm-hmm.
And you can see they're the blue and gold buses now when they were white and blue for a while. Uh, those buses are not cheap and they come with all the bells and whistles.
Yeah.
And there's no reason why somebody can't refurbish a bus to have a protective turnstile or something. I mean, they're putting new guards in the subway.
Right.
Putting the higher rails and stuff like that, but it's still not deterring. They showed that, on the news that kids are using them to jump over. And,
Right.
it
And
just,
nothing you do is going to be perfect, but it
Right.
doesn't mean you do nothing, right? I feel like something could be done.
I think, yeah, I think the immediate thing would probably be to hold the people accountable that they have caught.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
yes,
because if there are no consequences, or at least it's not the consequences as stated by law aren't being followed, then, like you said, it's a slap on the wrist. Then maybe when it should be something more, then maybe if those are followed, it can send that message.
it
Um,
becomes totally corral when there's no punishment for the crime.
right. Um, I'm just trying to think of some other because I've lived in different places and it's just trying to think of different systems if there were other ways that they guaranteed payment, but I don't think so. I think it was just, you get on the bus like normal. It's the thing is there, you either touch your thing or you put your money in.
I
And
was
people,
in Washington with my family and people lined up and they all paid. And it was a sight to see because I'm a bus, and I even talked to the bus operator. I said I'm a New York City bus operator. That's amazing to me. People line up like normal,
right,
everyday working class humans, and they stood on a line. They waited for the bus, and one by one, there was no pushing, no shoving, and they all got on the bus and paid.
Mhm.
You know,
Yeah. Now, of course, like you said, Mike, is nothing is perfect. And I mean, let's be honest, there are gonna be, especially from some younger folks, teenagers, early 20s that are gonna try to slide by, I not necessarily like walk up and like glare you in the face, but like if it's crowded and the back door is open, they might slide in real quick. There's gonna be some of that, right? But for it to be like I think this the number was like 46 or 48% of riders aren't paying. Um, that's much more than just a few tricksters trying to get a quick ride.
Right.
now with the old buses, the doors in the back used to open and
Right.
close, and the switch that we could hit that would close them fast. Now
Uh-huh.
with the new buses, they come out and then they open like supermarket doors. So now when you hit the switch, it takes a longer time for them to close, and if somebody even goes near them, they open right back up.
Now, what's the purpose of those new doors? Anything, any benefit or anything?
It
I
sounds like it might be a safety mechanism. He's saying if they're near the door, they open up. I guess so you don't get someone stuck in the door.
Yeah, yeah,
Okay,
yeah. Basically a safety issue so that people don't get stuck in the door, but it creates more of a that people can come in without paying. And they even
right.
have Omni terminal in the back of the bus, but people just walk past it like it doesn't exist.
Sure,
Right.
sure.
Right. Now,
Hmm.
as we know, there's a proposal out there for free buses. Chris alluded to it earlier. He said you might need to increase taxes, have some kind of MTA tax added to city residents or state residents or what have you. Would there be a way, do you think, to do it without that tax?
I don't see how we could do it without that tax. I really don't see an answer to the problem for the most part, except that would be to me, the perfect answer. Then, listen, you're a New York City resident. You want to ride the New York City subway. You even like
You
everybody
would,
in
you
the
would have it applied to the subway as well, so there'll be no more MTA
no
fares.
more MTA fares. Period. That's
Okay.
it. Go to the fares altogether. Uh, if you live in a neighborhood and you don't have children, you still pay school tax.
Right. No, you're right
Mm.
about that. What about tolls? Would you still have tolls on the bridges, or would that be included in this new tax?
I think the tolls on the bridges you might need to keep in order to still pay for the maintenance on the bridges. You would have
Mm.
to see how much money you garnished from people and where it left us. And
Right.
it might be enough to pay for the tolls and bridges and get rid of that.
Now, you can
That-
see people kind of viscerally being opposed to this based on the notion that you're trying to tax everyone. You're asking everyone to pay more money because of people who were breaking the law, right? So you have half the people not paying the fare they're supposed to. And because the MTA couldn't get a hold of it or the government couldn't figure out how to enforce the law properly, we're asking everyone to just pay money and letting people get away with what they were doing wrong in the first place.
And then you live in socialism.
And I think there's another thing to consider too, and we've talked about this a couple of times. I believe it was last year or the year before, where there was an article that came out that cited that 50% of people living in New York City aren't able to afford basic necessities. So
Right.
including another 2% on top of
Right.
that of their income would make things a little bit more difficult as well. So I don't know if that'll go over very well
Right.
unless everything else somehow comes down.
We have some of the highest rents in the country, and it's insane. It
Yeah,
really,
absolutely.
Yeah, cost
Absolutely.
of living is already off the chart. So
yeah,
I mean, what you're proposing, though, does in some ways
Sure.
make things more affordable because you're saying no more fares, but that would only apply for people who are taking mass transit, right? Would that
yeah.
incentivize people? I mean, I'm just brainstorming here, right? But would that make some people think, well, if I'm paying more money anyway, I might as well take advantage of the service since maybe I
Exactly.
didn't take the
I
bus before, ride the subway before, but now I
Yeah.
got to pay for it regardless of whether I take it or not, basically. So I might as well use it.
I think that's a way of thinking, and then it cuts down emissions, it cuts down air pollution if more people are
Mm-hmm.
taking mass transit because they have the new clean air buses that are
Right.
electric, and they're eventually going to go to fully electric buses. I
Right.
drove one that was a prototype last year, and it was pretty wild to not hear an engine when I stopped.
Yeah, I mean, I think there definitely merits to that idea. and getting more people on there, like I said, less congestion, people on the road, which could probably even be reason to pull back things like congestion pricing. And those buses and those trains are running anyway, so it's not like their costs are going to go that much higher.
And
But you do have
I
to give us better mass transit options, right? Like the Queens Link, like better train lines, better train service. Because if we don't have that, then you're just punishing people, but you're not giving them any real alternatives.
Right.
and I can say that if you do a tax like that, most people will ride, and you won't have any more problems. Crime would probably go down to almost nothing in the subway and buses. You know why people have crime in the subway and buses? Because they can.
Because
I don't understand this. That they have crime. Why?
Because they can. There's certain people that, oh, it's cool to not pay the fare. There's certain people that, they join their friends and it's a group and they, oh, we don't have to pay the fare. Let's just hop in the subway.
Well,
Subway,
yeah, if you didn't have a fare, then there could be no more crime of fare evasion, but you still could have people committing crimes, right, who are mentally unstable or what have you.
yeah, of course,
yeah,
there would be crime that would have to be monitored and they would
Yeah.
have to, the public would still have to be monitored with a police force or whatever security you have in the system. But as far as fare evasion would go
Right.
down,
Well, yeah.
the ridership would probably drop because people wouldn't be riding that were evading, and then the people that wanted to use it might go up. So it might balance the scale.
you think the people who were evading the fares would stop riding the at that point?
I think a portion of them would. I think a portion of them would.
What would be their alternative then?
I think some people do it just to do it. I don't think they need an alternative. I think some people. I have one gentleman that gets on, and he's a constant regular, and he just walks in and he goes, "Hi, good morning. I don't have the fare, and I would like to have a ride. Goodbye." And he walks right past me. And it's to me, it's somebody who needs mental help probably,
Mm.
but does it just to do it on a daily basis. And he rides several different buses. He's all over the bus system. Multiple drivers that I know from different depots. We all talk about what's going on in our system, and everybody knows this guy. Like he just does it to do it. He's probably
Wow.
retired or he's mentally ill, and he gets
Right.
funding government or whatever, but he just rides the buses because he can.
So you think some people maybe get a rush, like a dopamine hit from not paying when they're supposed to be paying, and if you took that away, it wouldn't be fun to ride anymore?
Exactly. It's like I'm not
Wow.
doing something wrong. I'm not that. Well, look at a child and don't touch the stove, don't touch the stove, and then they touch the stove to find out because they needed to do that. So
And
like,
I think
don't evade the fare, don't evade the fare, and we're doing it just to do it.
Mm.
I think it could be a couple of people like that, but when we're talking 48%, I
Right.
think the large portion of that is just they just don't care. And then, like you said, also some seeing others not doing it and think, well, why am I doing it? And it just creates a domino effect.
As I know, the percentage also grew during COVID because we were just letting them in the back door for free and we were closing off the front where we weren't engaging with them. But
Right.
then the problem with the ADA customers because they wanted to get on and they needed to get on the front. So now they had to make exceptions. So if you're making exceptions for him, why aren't you letting me ride on the front? So we used to get in those confrontations.
What
Like,
about
So wait, you're saying that the ADA passengers, what do you mean? They don't pay anything?
no, ADA pass during COVID when the bus was closed off from it was the front of the seats to the driver. So the first three seats up to the driver was closed off.
Okay.
Nobody could ride except ADA passengers in that space. So now people would confront us and be like, how come he gets to ride? Oh, he has a wheelchair, but I want to come in. And then you have people faking illnesses and, walking with canes because they just want to get on in the front of the bus. And
Hmm.
I experienced that where 2 weeks ago you were perfectly fine. Now today you have a cane. Accidents can happen.
Mhm.
People could fall down, but for the most part, we knew what was going on.
Right.
What about increasing pay structures based on income and ability to pay, creating more incentives? People, if they have low income, give them a discount or free fares.
They have a discount program out now as
Right.
far as So there
That's what
is
I'm
a,
saying. Why not do more of that and
there
make
could
sure
be,
everyone knows, like, for example, if a lot of people aren't paying because they truly can't afford it, well, then why aren't they given more access or more information about these programs? Or maybe these programs should be expanded to reach more people.
and if everybody paid, then the fare would be less too. They raised the fare because people aren't paying.
Yeah.
We're at 290 now. When we were kids, Mike, how much was it? 50 cents? 25 cents.
Mm-hmm.
I remember my father maybe 50 cents, 75 cents, and people were having like problems back then with it being raised, and the issue started back then. I mean, my father drove in the mid 70s to like 91, 92 before he passed away, and once the Metro cards became a thing, my father was just fed up with the job because he didn't like computers. He didn't want to get involved on that. Um, Counting change was easy. You just drop 50 cents or a dollar. And, times have changed and inflation, things increase, of course. But I think it's an extreme that we're almost as expensive as the Long Island Railroad. The Long Island Railroad, the last time I rode it, was like $5 or $6 a person.
It's
It
good. Well,
just
it depends on how far you go, right? It could be more than that.
Yeah, it could be more than that.
Yeah.
That could get you by zone. And believe it or not, everybody on the Long Island Railroad, they have to pay.
Right. Right. So yeah, that's actually a really good point. Why do you think that is? That they don't get away with it?
There's, I think there's more security around them.
Yeah, they definitely
They will not allow you to ride if you do not pay, and then they'll call the motorman and tell them to stop the train at the next stop,
Right.
and we,
They'll stop at the next stop and they'll call the cops and they'll throw your ass off.
right,
The
right.
bus drivers can't do that, right?
We do have a console, which is a command center. We contact the command center. But if we contact the command center and say, oh, this guy got on and he didn't pay, they said, oh, just let him ride and keep it moving. You got to
Hmm.
schedule.
You
You
got a
got to,
schedule to keep.
I think also like, there's another aspect of that part that is also kind of sensitive too. So for example, let's say there was a system where the person got on, they didn't pay, and they got on there, and then you press the button or the console that say, hey, this person didn't pay, and then that security meets you at the next stop or something like that, right? Um, that person knows that you just reported them. They know
exactly.
that. And so the next day when you're driving, they may show
Some,
up and now you might have a problem, right? It's if you're on the subway, there's police there. So if they do confront people, plus the drivers there are usually inside their own
yeah.
rooms and they're not
Mhm.
accessible. Bus drivers are publicly accessible. You're out there.
Yeah.
Like I said to you before, we're ducks sitting in a fishbowl.
Right.
That's what it often feels like. And there's a lot of glass surrounding us that, like we just feel like an open target at any given time.
Mhm.
Now let me ask you, do you ride the same route every day, or do they switch you guys around?
We have a pick by seniority quarterly. So we
Okay.
work January to April, the same run, and then we pick. And if you fall into the seniority and it allows you to pick that run again, you can pick the same run. Somebody can bump you out of the run, or you can bump somebody else out of a better run. I just had that situation where we just did summer pick and we go from June until September. The end of it's like July 1st until September. So I bumped somebody out of their run because I didn't want anything else at the time, and it was a better pick for me, and it fit my lifestyle better. And it's nothing personal, like I'm not looking to cut the guy's money, or it's just I have the seniority and I'm able to pick it.
Right. And the reason I asked is because I used to, and this is not in New York, but uh, living in Hawaii, the bus is one of the main public transport, is the only public transportation out there. There are no trains and whatnot. And so I used to ride the bus all the time, a lot, to school, to different parts of the island, this and that. And so we would kind of know the bus driver when we got on. We'd get on the bus, be like, "Hey, dude, what's going on? How you doing?" He's like, "Oh, what's going on?" And and just keep it moving. And so, we weren't trying to get over on him, like,
And
you know what I mean? Like, so my thinking was like, if they're bouncing you guys around different places, maybe they're just not getting into to know the community. Maybe that could be an
Yeah.
aspect or something.
But the flip side to that, Jay, is that if you had bus drivers with a different route every time, you wouldn't have the situation you described earlier, where like they're waiting for you the next day. You know what I mean?
It's true.
Yeah, we pick by seniority. Like right now, and different runs call for different days off. Like some of them have Sunday, Monday, some of them have Wednesday, Thursday.
Mm-hmm.
I the run that I have now, I just switched. I was Sunday, Monday off. Now I'm going to be Saturday, Sunday off. And but then come November, I have vacation. So they have a board called vacation relief. So somebody picks that for that week on that board. They pick their work weekly and they pick whatever people are on vacation by seniority. They pick vacation leave. Or they have the extra list, which is every day you're doing something different, and by seniority, you there's maybe 50 people on the extra list. So by seniority, you fall into the daily open work. So that's people calling out sick. That's people that have to go for physicals. That's people
Yeah.
who have any emergencies. So you have an extra board to cover that. So, for the most part, I've been driving the same route for maybe 3 or 4 years now. It's just different times of the route. Like I stayed on the same route for summer pick, but it's just a different time. I used to do midnight to 8. Now I'm doing 1:30 in the morning till 9:30 in the morning.
Ooh, that's a rough one. And that's another thing too, like at a time like that in the middle of the night, there's less people around, so any confrontation, the danger could be elevated as well.
Well, you know what the old song was, right? The freaks come out at night.
Absolutely, yes.
But now
What
Points
you
if
don't
you
get
remember
paid. You don't
bonus
get paid
points if
more
you
money
remember
if
the
you're
group.
driving the night, do you?
what happened?
You get paid more money for driving the night shift, do you?
Not as much as it used to be when my father was there. My father was a tier one operator. I'm a tier six operator, but we still get a night differential.
You
Yeah.
do. Okay.
Yeah, usually night shift workers get, especially the graveyard shift, get a higher wage. And like I don't know if it's as much for different places as it used to be.
It's not as much as it used to be. And weekends too, we get like a differential also.
Right. But I was just thinking in terms of the danger, right? Like to Jay's point, when you're out there late at night, fewer people around,
Yeah, definitely. We're not
darker, right? It could be more dangerous. And so maybe you should be compensated for that aspect of it.
You have to have your head on a swivel and be ready for anything at any time.
Yeah.
And what do you think would it be effective if there were like, like you said, maybe a security guard that was kind of married to the driver as he went around the city, someone that was there to do the enforcement. Um, do you think that would be effective? Do you think that would maybe invite some blowback on the driver when that person wasn't around or anything like that?
I don't know if it would invite blowback on the driver because now you have a law enforcement official on the bus. It might have blowback on the law enforcement official.
Hmm.
Right.
That could be a concern. So maybe they would have to switch on a weekly or daily basis, or they could come up with something that they're not with the same driver every day, or figure out a game plan to keep them safe as well. Because now they're law enforcement, and you stop me from riding today, but you're only one law enforcement officer. I'm going to bring 20 of my friends tomorrow, and once you step off that bus, you're mine.
But I mean, yeah, but if it's I think it depends. If it's a law enforcement officer, there's definitely a different consequence than if it's a bus driver or the a company security guard. You know what I mean? So I think there's less of that chance of that person getting jumped because that would be like the same as just a beat cop getting jumped walking through a neighborhood. But perhaps just the presence could, you know, make people at least pay or avoid going on the bus if they're just there to cause some kind of trouble.
When I was younger, they used to have separate entities. It was New York City Police, and then there was Transit Police, and I believe
Right.
they've been melded into one outfit where they're all the same now. There is no Transit Police anymore. It was defunct, and they just make them all police, and you work in the subway or you work, near transit or whatever. But I had a friend who retired as a sergeant from the Transit Police when we were younger. But I don't believe that's a thing anymore. So maybe bringing something like that back, like New York City Transit Police might be an option.
Costs would definitely go up then in that same scenario because now you've got to employ someone that's going to be on each and every bus on each and every route for each and
Right.
every shift.
Okay, but you
That
got to do something, right? So let me ask you guys this, right? Is you I don't know if you could do both necessarily. I guess you wouldn't need to do both. So the question would be, which way would you go, right? Would you try to prevent enforcement, prevent evasion with more enforcement, right? Like these ideas, cops on the buses or whatever, security guards, or would you say, you know what, we can't win this fight. We're going to make the fares free. We're going to just eliminate the fares, but we're going to have to make up that money some other way by raising taxes or whatever. I mean, which of the two routes would you choose?
I think either way you go, it has to be an extreme. And to me, to keep everybody safe and to keep the business moving, I really feel that the way to go is no fare and everybody pays a tax that lives in New York.
Hmm.
You don't ride the subway? I'm sorry, enough people do. You pay school tax, so now you pay MTA tax.
Yeah.
What do you think, Jay?
I
That's
I wouldn't like that one. Because that the effect of it now, I think in the idea of it sounds good because then that would, like I said, ridership would probably go up. There would probably be good benefits all around, but one, 50% of New Yorkers are having a hard time affording to live there, period. Two, I think that 2% on someone that's in the poverty line is going to be a heavier burden than someone that's making much more money. So it could be kind of like a poor tax in a way.
And
Um,
again, we don't have adequate mass transit options in certain neighborhoods. So you're asking us to pay more money, but you're not giving us an alternative. And so it's not
well,
necessarily going to put more people around here on the buses or on the trains that we don't have good mass transit in the first place. It's just punishing us.
there's 8 million people or something like that in New York City. So if everybody had to pay this,
Mhm.
then we can create better service probably.
I think, and that's absolutely true. How would I go about it? I mean, I would think, first of all, I would think if there is a real danger of the bus drivers, I don't know how many assaults against bus drivers are happening. I would probably first make sure that the laws that were there are being enforced, that the ones that they do catch are receiving the accountability that they're supposed to be receiving, and that would stop them from doing it again and eventually would cut down on some of those things there. If there is a danger for the drivers to get assaulted or some kind of attack, I think Chris mentioned it earlier, like a redesign that kind of puts the driver in their own booth, so to
Mhm.
speak, so they're not accessible from anyone that may be looking to harm them.
Right.
Could be a benefit. I mean, I think that's, that helps also with the MTA drivers on the subways and whatnot as well. Bus drivers are just kind of like left out in the wind. So I think those would
Right.
be the two things I would start with and see if the actual enforcement reduces a fare jumping. And of course, it's going to take time because,
Sure.
it might take a year or so before people to start getting to know that, okay, wait a minute, we can really get into trouble for this.
Yeah.
Like, um,
That's what my instinct is as well, right? I don't feel like we've exhausted all of our options to try to beat fare evasion or address fare evasion. I feel like we could be doing a lot more when it comes to that. I don't think we need to just throw up our hands and say we can't do anything about this. Maybe, right? Maybe we exhaust our options and find out, well, we've tried everything and you know what? It's not really making much of a difference. We're not making much of a dent in this. But I don't feel like we're at that point yet where we should just give up.
And I don't think Chris's idea of, a tax or some way to make it where there's no fare, I don't think that should be taken off the table. I think other things should be done first.
Yeah.
Ideally, mass transit with no fare in a city would be amazing.
Right.
It would open it up to a lot of people if other things are in place to make it where it's affordable to do.
And could you do that without raising taxes on middle class people or lower class people?
That would be, the difficulty there. Now, I think politically, there's probably some
there's
people, and this is
a lot
just me being cynical.
Mhm.
This is me being cynical. Some people like it in the state that it is, so they can request more money.
Mhm.
Um, because and I've noted to you many times when I first moved to New York, I believe it was in 2004 when I moved there, I distinctly remember the MTA had over $1 billion in surplus. And within a year or two, they're raising rates. And I'm like, why are they raising rates if they've got $1 billion in surplus?
Good
Like, it
question.
doesn't make any sense. And in the time I lived there, they raised rates at least two, maybe three more times.
Right.
And so that tells me someone at the top wants more money in there, and or there's a massive mishandling of the funds that they're taking in. So, I think some of that could be someone likes the system in the way that it is.
That's it. Yeah, a broken system with chaos. People benefit from it somewhere.
Yeah.
So maybe we can ask a more nuanced poll question then, because originally we were thinking a basic question: should more be done to combat fare evasion? But now that we've got these two competing ideas on the table, maybe we can ask a poll question on both of those. Like which route do you prefer? No pun intended.
I see what you did there.
What do you think?
Yeah,
You want to go that way?
I think that's a good one. That would be a good, yeah.
So here's the thing: if we ask about free buses and subways, I think most people would say that sounds great, but I think you have to stipulate: do you want that even if taxes are going to go up?
Right.
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so
Would you appreciate free mass transit if you're
right,
paying
but
for
you're paying for it. So yeah, so it's not really free. You're kind of just paying for it, paying for the privilege of using whatever you want, right?
it?
So the question then would be: should more be done to combat fare evasion, or should we eliminate the fares on mass transit, even if that means increasing taxes?
That's a good question. I think you worded it perfectly.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah. Let's see what people have to say about that. And I think it'd be interesting. And I think, like I said, I think if there was a way to do it where just the mass transit was just a part of living in the city where there was no fare, I think that would be an amazing idea that could be looked to from other mass transit places around the world because it does open up transportation to everyone
Mm-hmm.
living there.
Yeah,
Um,
you just have to struggle with pay,
Figuring out how to cover it, how to pay
right,
for it in the
right,
best way possible.
right. And don't tell me the answer is you're going to double the tolls yet again. I mean, there are people who still have to drive.
Yeah.
Absolutely right. You're right. That shouldn't be punishing someone else to make that
Yeah,
happen. It should be that, I mean, you're already taking in taxes. They should be able to allocate that some way, maybe reducing operational costs somehow. Like they're going to be going towards electric buses, right? So that means there's going to be some operational costs that might shift downward a little bit. There's some savings right there. There's probably ways it can be messed with, but it'd be an kind of a utopian type of idea almost.
sure.
100%.
All
Yeah.
right. Well, we don't have a whole lot more time, but I did want to go over the poll results from last week, Jay.
Yeah, absolutely. So last week we had the poll when we were talking about ranked choice voting and you had noticed that you think that there was a little bit more aggressive messaging, made things a little bit more hostile instead of just vote for me. This is what I do. He doesn't do this. I do this. It was more like, hey, just don't vote for that person. Don't rank that person.
Right.
So the poll that we had was, do you believe that ranked choice voting has made campaigning more negative?
Hmm.
So the results here. Um, 16% said yes, 84% said no.
Wow.
So others don't seem to agree in that way. We had a number of comments. Before I get to the comments, Chris, what do you think in that regard? Do you think the ranked choice voting has made the campaigning a little bit more negative?
I think campaigning isn't what it's supposed to be. I have like skewed political views. So I don't think it's what it was meant to be when politics started so many years ago. I really think that we're in a big conundrum with that as well.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think we talk about the negativity today, and it is quite negative. It probably a little bit more negative than when I was young, but throughout history, and Mike can definitely speak to this, there have been some periods in our campaign in history where there was some really bad negative
Oh
campaigning.
yeah, Civil War era was the worst, probably.
Yeah.
It
So
feels like the world isn't at a happy place right now. There's a lot of tension, and
there's a lot.
you could cut the angry tension in the air with a knife, especially in New York City. You
Right,
walk around New
right.
York, and kind of like watching the Ghostbuster movie where you see all the negative energy go to the one that I could feel all. You just walk out of your house and you can feel that energy as soon as
Hmm.
you.
So one of the comments here, one person said, if anything, they think that ranked choice voting reduces negativity because it favors consensus, because you actually have to get a majority from the preferences, and extremes tend to get weeded out. Um,
That's the theory, right?
that's the
We've
theory.
been told that was how they sold ranked choice voting, right? But the question is, has that played out in practice? I don't know. When you're seeing commercials on TV in a primary of 11 candidates for mayor, and they're not even saying why you should vote for them, they're just saying why the other candidates are bad.
They're
To
all
me,
picking on
it's
each
not
other,
working as intended.
talking about keep the schmuck out of our business and stuff like. When we were kids, we never heard of that stuff on TV. I mean, like, it was, oh, this is what I could do for the city, or this is what I could do for
Well,
the city.
right. And I made the point last week. There was a commercial for Brad Lander on TV that didn't mention anything about Brad Lander. It only talked negatively about Cuomo, but at the end it said paid for by Lander 2025. And so it was literally just an attack ad about the opponent. And again, this is not a general election where it's polarized to two candidates, right? This is the third place candidate in the primary field of 11 candidates, not even attempting to say why you should vote for him. It's just vote for all of us except for that one, right? And you saw that coming from both directions. So I think it did make things more negative than usual.
Well, someone did mention that so one of the comments here said Mamdani and Lander were essentially campaigning together, so no. How is don't rank Cuomo any more negative than don't vote for Cuomo?
But why is it all about whom you should not vote for as opposed to who you should vote for?
Like, vote for him, vote for me. This is what I'm
Yeah,
gonna do. This
right.
is what I'm doing for you.
Right.
This make better for you. That's the platform that they should be standing on. It
But is
shouldn't be.
that ranked choice voting's fault, or is that just the way that campaigning is happening right now? Like we've seen, especially in the last 10 years, like, negativity has been a much more
Things,
prominent feature
yes,
of
things
campaigning.
have been negative, but just think about a primary with multiple candidates in it, right? Again, it's not a general election where it's one versus one, because in a general election, if you say something negative about the other opponent, in theory, you're helping yourself, right? Because it's a zero sum game in that sense. But when you're talking about an open field with many candidates, without ranked choice voting, why would you have any incentive to just attack one of those candidates and never say one good thing about yourself?
Right. No, I get that. It doesn't make a lot of sense in that regard, but
It's almost like, and here's a segue. It's almost like a manager in a wrestling ring talking about himself and his guy, and he's
Mm-hmm.
putting down the other guy 100%. And he's not telling you why he's the better guy. It's just the other guy, like, I'm the manager and I have Mike with me, and we're digging into you, and like, he's horrible. He's this, he's that, he does this. And come Friday night, we're going to beat his pants off. You
Yeah.
know,
But that makes more sense even when it's one on one. But again, this is an open primary with multiple candidates involved. And so, the theory behind attacking one person is you think that's going to be the more formidable opponent, right? And so you try and take them down, and you think, all right, I don't need to say why you should vote for me because I'm assuming I'm going to land somewhere on your ballot. You're picking five people. So you don't need to pick just me as long as you don't pick that one. Like you're just kind of like taking apart the people who stand in your way, figuring you're more likely than to land in someone's top five. But if they only have one person to vote for, you kind of have to convince them why you're better than everyone else, as opposed to why there are certain people that you should leave off.
it's funny
yeah.
you just said you just said you land in someone's top five, and it just made me think like, Has the campaigning in New York City become like the new MySpace page when everyone's trying to fight for who's going to be their top eight?
Pretty
So,
much.
I
uh,
think so, pretty much.
someone here mentioned that not in San Francisco, so I assume they've got ranked choice voting there, and this person saying it's gotten less awful in most cases with ranked choice voting in San Francisco. So,
Okay, I can't speak to San Francisco, but
um,
I saw more hashtags telling people who I shouldn't vote for than who to vote for here.
right. Someone here put up a chart of dollars spent by outside groups on ads supporting or opposing candidates, and they said maybe the $8 million dedicated to negative Mamdani ads have had something to do with it. And they showed, it looked like here, what was this? Yeah, they did about, wow, that's a crazy chart. So they showed here that there was about $18 million of dollars spent by outside candidates to support Cuomo and about $960,000 to oppose Cuomo. On the other side, Mamdani, there was about $1 million spent to support Cuomo and $8.1 million to oppose him, far exceeding any other candidate. Um,
But this
Wow.
is all under ranked choice voting. Isn't that my point? That we've gotten more negative under ranked choice voting?
it's yeah, I mean it seems like this chart is crazy to look at here, this number here. But yeah, it's interesting. Very interesting.
So one thing now that the ranked choice tabulations have been done, right? I think a lot of people are confused even about how it works or what's going on with it because people thought even last week prior to the ranked choice calculations being done that it was done and they were like, oh yeah, this candidate won only because of ranked choice voting. I'm like, no, those are just the first choice votes. They hadn't even done a ranked choice yet. So now after the absentees were counted, you had your ranked choice tabulations, and I looked at every single primary in New York City, right? I think there were 38 of them this year between the citywide races, city council races, borough president, et cetera, et cetera. And not one result changed as a result of ranked choice voting. The candidate who got the most first choice votes won every single time. And so that also leads to the question, do we need to have this complicated system that's confusing the hell out of people if it's not changing any results anyway?
That's a good question too. Um, There's a thing here. Maybe you can answer, speak to this, Mike. Someone here spoke to that, and they said the thing about the "don't rank my opponent" line is partly because the NYC primary ranked choice voting ballot doesn't have enough slots to rank all the candidates.
Oh, come on.
They said it doesn't work entirely right unless you have space to rank more than just the competitive candidates. This race only had 5 slots for 11 candidates plus write-ins, so the election still had to deal with gaming things and vote bargaining. What do you think, say to that?
You've got five choices and they're saying that's not enough.
Well,
They
he
won't
they're
literally
saying
be able to vote for every candidate in the race.
this is another person from San Francisco. They said our ranked choice voting elections here in San Francisco have 10 slots, so there's room for all your preferred choices, including a couple unlikelies and even write-ins. So they're saying that limiting it to 5 slots, it makes it more competitive for don't vote for this person because there's only 5 slots that you can slide in.
So, yeah. So in the other system, you can vote for everyone, basically.
Yeah, you rank them in apparently up to 10. So in this case,
So,
someone would have been only one person would have been left off.
You can still
so
leave
if
people off your ballot, though. You don't have to vote for all 10.
Right.
they say that 10 is enough, then who's to say 15? Who's to say 20? You know,
That's a
you
good
have to have a
question
limit
too.
somewhere. You have to have a limit
Yeah. And
somewhere.
can you really trust human beings? Look, people are not machines, right? Can you
Mhm.
trust human beings with the task of accurately ranking five, or now you're saying 10 or more candidates in order of how good they would be, right? If they won, like you're ranking them in order of preference. Can you really trust humans with the ability to make those decisions correctly on a consistent basis?
Well, I think that's I don't know if that's the right question to ask though, because you're talking about their preference. So it's not is are they making the right decision on a consistent basis? They're making their preference, whether
Even
that's
if
the
it's
right
subjective, though.
choice
I
or
mean,
not.
my question has an objective and a subjective element to it, right? Number one, yeah, I think it is worthwhile to ask, are they making the right decisions? Are they making the best decisions for the electorate? But even putting that aside, are they accurately representing their own values by ranking up to 10 people, 1 through 10? I mean, do people know enough about these local candidates to even make that call?
That's a good question as well. And we've seen like they have extensive information out there, but is anyone really reading all of it to know? You would think
Yeah, and
maybe,
a lot of it is the same. Like we saw these debates, we saw the DC 37 debate, and they're all saying the same thing anyway. So, even people like us who pay more attention to it, and I had the same conundrum. I went into the voting booth and I'm like, wow, I wasn't even going to do ranked choice, but I did decide to do a ranking when I was there. But even I'm admitting that it's a little bit arbitrary. Like you're just deciding, all right, I'll put this person, then I'll put this person. But is it really
right.
scientifically accurate to my political leanings? You know what I mean? Like it's just you're just picking names at a certain point.
At some point, yeah, I was gonna say, yeah, at some point you might just have your first, second, and then you're like, well, there's 10 more slots, like
Right. Right.
whatever.
Yeah, whatever.
Yeah.
You're
Accurately.
trying to convince more people to vote. I don't know if confusing them this way is really the answer. Someone said to me, but not to me, I was reading a thread online a couple of weeks ago. I might have mentioned it on here before, but they were saying that based on the polling that came out, some of the other candidates were just as likely to win as any others. They were saying, well, with ranked choice voting, Brad Lander and Adrian Adams and Michael Blake are just as equally as likely to win. I'm like, what are you talking about? You obviously don't understand how this is going to work. The polls show it's between one or two of these candidates, but even people who are following politics closely don't understand that because it's confusing to people.
So let me ask, do you think there's been enough, or that there should be more of educating the public on how this works for this system to have the effect that it was has intended?
I think more education is always a good thing, but I don't know if that's going to get you all the way there.
Yeah.
I follow politics very loosely. I'm not a very political person, so you guys are talking a lot of Greek to me, but I catch the concept. I do catch on to the concept.
Yeah. I mean, someone, for example, said they were going to vote for their preferred candidate and then vote for a bunch of other candidates beneath that person to dilute the vote totals of the candidate that they didn't like. I'm like, it doesn't work that way. You're putting other candidates on your ballot. It's not going to make any difference, especially if the person you pick is one of the top two finishers. Whoever you put second, third, fourth, and fifth won't even come into consideration at that point. They only come into consideration if your first one gets eliminated. But people don't seem to understand that. Even if you explain it, it's just like I think it's just kind of a convoluted system.
You know
Yeah,
what? I think maybe to make it easier, maybe someone should put together and maybe an animated explainer video with each of the
Mm-hmm.
candidates wearing like a basketball jersey, and show it like one of the March Madness brackets,
Mm-hmm.
and like this is how the candidates
It
advance.
has stuff like that though. I remember that last time they had videos like that,
Really? Okay, okay.
and it's
Well,
not bad. Like explaining what we have is good, but it doesn't mean that the system is good, right? You can explain it
right.
all day long.
Well, I think,
uh,
look,
listen,
if it's not working, then, I think there's still something to be said for attempting to do something different to see if they can make it. Now
Mm-hmm.
you've seen it. If it's not working, okay, maybe you move to something else, or you stop doing it, or you collect a little bit more data at some point. But yeah, I think it was at least good to attempt something different.
yeah,
Yeah, although I don't know what's going to be worse. I mean, the fact that no results changed, which kind of suggests that what was the point of this exercise? So some might say, well, you're saying no results changed, but really they did. You're just not seeing it because it changed the way people voted. But you're making assumptions by saying that. You don't know that. But also, is that predicament worse that results don't seem to be changing, or would it be worse if they were changing? Right? I mean, imagine if the candidates who got the most votes now we were told all lost. That I don't think that would be a good outcome either.
Right.
mm,
People would be disillusioned at that
Yeah,
point. And I think that's the last thing we need is more people to be cynical about voting, especially nowadays. They're like, well, listen, they got the most votes and they didn't win. Like, what does my vote mean then?
right.
what does that mean? Like, is it all smoke and mirrors?
Right, right. Or
Absolutely.
there's some kind of
People think the
conspiracy.
whole thing is it's all fixed. It doesn't matter. Yeah, they'll say like the ranked choice gods pick this person. Like kind of like how people don't know what the electoral college is. They say like this person won the vote, but the electoral college decided for that person. That's what
Right.
they would say with this. They would say this person really won, but whoever's behind ranked choice voting really picks someone else.
Yeah, I
Now,
agree.
you said it doesn't seem like the made any difference in this race. So to me, that brings two questions up. One is, were people actually putting other choices down, or were they just choosing one person
No,
specific?
most people were putting other choices down.
Okay,
Now,
so that
look,
means
I
they were
compared
trying
the
to.
final round in the mayor's race to the number of ballots that were cast in the first round, and there was a drop off, but it wasn't a very huge drop off.
Okay. So, I mean, it could mean that people are participating in it. It's just maybe this candidate had overwhelming support, and so it didn't matter in this case.
But again, I looked at like 38 races, every single race in New York City. It didn't matter in any case.
Ah, okay. So that brings the other question up. If this was to put in place to try to increase participation and it didn't really make a difference, it sounds like it just means people just don't care about voting, period. Or they're more apathetic, or they're more.
But could this make them more apathetic? I mean, you could look at turnout and you could say, okay, turnout actually went up between the last election and this one, but
Hmm.
there are other factors that come into play here. It isn't just ranked choice voting. Could it, for example, if it did go up, would it have gone up even more without this? You don't know
Right.
that. So anyone who tells you this is the reason is just speculating.
Right. I think right now to say, oh, well, the last time it went up more this time than last time, you'd have to kind of factor in the coming out of COVID era
Right,
type of
exactly.
existence. Like the numbers right now in these 10 years on everything, I think on sales, on,
Yep.
all kinds of things,
Yep.
still is going to have a little bit of that COVID era restriction on it.
Well, COVID changed the world
Yeah.
more than we, and we're going to feel the ripple effect for a long time. Oh,
Absolutely, absolutely. So maybe it's just going to take a little bit longer for them to kind of see the data that's coming in from this ranked choice voting. Why can't I say that? It's like a tongue twister for me for some reason tonight. I don't know what's going on there. So
All right.
anyway,
Well,
interesting.
yeah, good discussion as always.
Absolutely. So we'd like to always give the bottom line to the guests. So, Chris Craven, out of what you were talking about, or everything that we talked about, or anything in particular, what is the bottom line?
the bottom line is we have to figure out a way to stop fare and make the New York City subways and buses safer for the riders and the workers. Also, if I could get a quick plug in, I
Sure.
always EDP yoga. I sent Mike a pic from January until now. I'm on my third time using EDP yoga. I've lost close to 45, 50 pounds. It's a low impact, high intensity workout program that combines yoga, calisthenics, and isometrics. And it's so much more. If you get the app, $9.99 a month, cheap plug, cheap plug. You're welcome, Diamond Dallas page. Uh, it's a change. It's a life changing experience. I've met Diamond Dallas Page on several occasions. I've gone to his workshops. Um, if there was a TV show called Light Side of the Ring, Diamond Dallas
Mm.
would get tired of being in every episode because he is truly a good, genuine person who likes to help other people. On top of that, I like to promote. Oop, I think I lost me. Have you lost me?
No, no, we still
Oh,
got you. I think
I
Mike
was
is.
I was
Oh,
sharing the screen of your weight loss. There you go.
there's the picture. That is from January until the end of May.
Now, I
Wow.
was going to say, um, I believe the last time you were on, you were talking about just getting into this
Yes.
Diamond Dallas Page program, or you had mentioned it definitely at that time. And maybe you just started, or you're just about to start. So it's
Started
pretty
at
awesome.
21, and I think it's been about that long since we've seen each other. So I think close to that. So,
Yeah.
21 or
You can
20.
see the difference, right, in the way you look. I'm sure you feel a lot better too.
My posture is
Yeah.
different. My legs, my arms, everything shrunk, including the belly, but the belly's the hardest to lose.
Hmm.
So
Always the
it,
hardest to go.
it's an amazing transformational program. If you're willing to put the work in, it'll change your life.
Wow.
Sounds good.
I
Yes,
also
as
like
always. Okay.
local professional wrestling. ECPW is always around. We have cards coming up. I'll keep people updated on that. You can follow me at Father Krayven, Krayven, on Facebook and Instagram. And then my group is the Covenant. We have the Covenant Catacombs on YouTube. I update that with all our new footage. I'm also a member of a council now for what are we calling it? We're calling it International Wrestling Council, and that's going to be starting September 27th in Elmcore in Corona, Queens. There's many different federations around the New York City area. I'm plugged into a lot of them, and you just look for Father Krayven because once you find Father Krayven, you will awaken to a new reality, and Father Krayven we trust. And me and Mike Scala, you can find us together commiserating on We Still Watch Wrestling on Facebook.
There you go. And Jay, where can people find Nuance?
They can find Nuance also on YouTube and other Facebook at Nuance Show, as well as everywhere that podcasts are available. They just go ahead and subscribe and it'll get pushed to your phone automatically. Um, yeah.
Sounds good. Well, thank you, Chris. Thank you, Jay. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. As always, we've got work to do. We'll catch you next time.